All right, thank you very much. It's an honor to be with you folks, and I appreciate everyone who put on the conference. This is fantastic and very needed. I have been the DA for Cumberland County, Fayetteville, so all of y'all are familiar with that. It wasn't too long of a drive down this morning for the last 15 years, and I was an assistant for 10 years before that. And I'm proud to say that along with our law enforcement, we've done a lot of work in the human trafficking area, and I've served on the commission for the last 10 years. So what I'm going to try to do in my few moments this morning is to talk a little bit about human trafficking from a prosecution and somewhat law enforcement perspective. And then as I'm going through this, as Nikki did, I'll highlight maybe things that will be in the breakout session if you'd be interested in learning a little bit more about some of the areas that I'm going to touch on. So I've got a couple slides, and hopefully they work. Yeah, they did. So this is sort of an overview, and I know y'all had a great day yesterday, and you're going to have more today. So some of this may be a little repetitive, but I just wanted to kind of touch base. You know, the basic types of human trafficking that we see is what's more thought of as the sex trafficking. And why I've got drug addiction or force or violence, that's usually how the trafficker's controlling the victim. In most of our cases. Then we've also got labor trafficking that probably doesn't get as much attention sometimes, but is also a problem, and particularly in North Carolina and in my county. And I'll talk a little bit about that. And then the illicit massage parlors, that's something that we've done some operations with in Cumberland. We kind of consider that as a hybrid because a lot of times labor trafficking is involved on the front end. A lot of times foreign nationals are coming in. They think they're coming to be part of some model agency or something like that, and they end up as a worker at a massage parlor, and then it gradually escalates to where they're forced into sexual servitude, and the massage parlors are just acting as a front for that type of behavior. This is just basic definitions. I won't read it all to you. That basically, sex trafficking is when you've got, basically a buyer and a seller, like we just heard about, for any exchange or value. And then, as a minor, we see a lot of that, unfortunately. And just wanted to reiterate that with minors, consent is not an issue. I mean, any type of activity like that with a minor is illegal. So those are the two types, or main two types of sex trafficking. Labor trafficking is simply modern day slavery, and I think a lot of ways that's the best way to put it. And we heard that earlier, and I think unfortunately that is accurate. It's where they're forced to perform labor services through the use of fraud, coercion, or force. And you can see that with debt bondage. You can see it a lot with forced labor, and then a case that I'll talk about in just a minute where we had involuntary child labor right there in our home community. Talk a little bit about the demographics. These probably won't surprise anybody. 71% are female, that being female adults and female children. 29% are male. 81% of the victims are trafficked for labor. So that sort of makes the point that I was talking about earlier. That is a problem. And then 19% are trafficked for sex, but they account for 2/3 of the profits. So only 19% of the victims, but 2/3 of the profits. So obviously that is also a big problem. Let's talk a little bit about the money it generates. And we talk about the demand, or why are people involved in this, and I think this points that out, that currently generates about $159 billion worldwide a year. It's passed illegal gun sales as the second largest criminal organization in the world. Drugs makes about 360. So I know it's not exactly half, but basically human trafficking produces almost half as much money annually as the drug trade. I mean, we've been hearing about drugs, all of us, our whole lifetime. It's a terrible thing, a scourge in our country and in our world. But to think that human trafficking is, half as large in profits is startling. And I know I'm not speaking for 60 minutes. I promise I'm not doing that in the breakout season maybe. But just for an example, $18 million is spent or generated by human trafficking globally each hour, 41 million on drugs. So that is what I would call the scope of the problem that we're dealing with. Let's talk about areas or characteristic of areas that are ripe for human trafficking. And unfortunately, these things apply to Cumberland County. They also apply to Brunswick County and across our state. Economies dependent upon agriculture and manufacturing. That's going to be most of your labor trafficking. Areas with popular professional and college sports events. I'm an NC State guy. I'll be going to the game tomorrow night. I love sports. You know, we love our Hurricanes, our Panthers, our ACC sports. But unfortunately, those things bring in a target-rich environment for trafficking, and we see that. Military bases. I'm very proud to have Fort Bragg in my jurisdiction, perhaps the largest military base in the world or in the United States. But that, Camp Lejeune down in Jacksonville, unfortunately, we see human trafficking around military bases, not only in our state, but across the country. Businesses, conferences, conventions. Las Vegas is not the only place, but it's the first one to come to mind. When you've got all type of conventions with thousands of people going, traffickers see that, again, as a target-rich environment. Interstate trucking. I live just a few minutes off I-95. Fayetteville is juxtaposed directly between New York and Miami, halfway between both. And everybody thinks, well, you must have a lot of drugs up and down 95. We do, but we also have a lot of trafficking up and down 95. So, and again, sort of hitting on the same thing, popular entertainment venues and tourist attractions. I mean, our state has everything anybody could want in tourism. We have the coast, we have the mountains, and everything in between. The larger cities in Raleigh and Charlotte, but unfortunately, that invites the criminal element. We're ninth in the country. You can see where most of the population is on the East Coast. This is a heat map of human trafficking. California on the West Coast is number one, but you can see a lot of red areas in North Carolina and in southeastern North Carolina as well. This is Cumberland County. You can see us there, kind of in the southeast region of the state. We're unfortunately, that big red spot for our amount of human trafficking. And I was talking just before I came up, and one thing I always say during these presentations to somewhat defend my county, our numbers are higher in human trafficking. One of the reasons is because our law enforcement, along with the prosecution through a task force, is committed to trying to charge those cases. And so we do have human trafficking, but we have more cases because we're charging more cases. I think that's very true of Mecklenburg County as well. What we see in Cumberland is women offered for sex through online web pages, often called the dark web. Backpage is probably the most common. I don't know if it's still the most common, but it has been for years. We also see cases where folks are held in sexual servitude through the use of narcotics. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in just a second and in detail in the breakout session. Investigations of prostitution in local hotels, some of the sting operations we do. I talked about the massage parlors. And you may be wondering, what type of punishment are people looking at if you're a human trafficker? We've talked a little bit about the solicitation end, but you can get as much as 20 years for an adult victim or 40 years for a child victim if you were trafficking somebody. So I'd like to thank the legislature as well as all of the organizations like the one putting this on in the Human Trafficking Committee and conference as well, commission, for pushing for that legislation, which has made it more attainable to get some punishment for these folks. I'm going to highlight 3 cases really quick. The first is one that will probably always stick with me. This was my first high-profile case as the elected DA, Shania Davis. Many of you may have heard about it. It seems impossible, the set of facts that we were faced with, but this little 5-year-old kindergarten student was trafficked by her mother. It's what I like to call homegrown trafficking, in that the mother owed money for a drug debt to her drug dealer, a fellow by the name of Mario McNeil. And in exchange for the debt, instead of money, she turned over her 5-year-old daughter to be sexually trafficked and abused. She was, in fact, molested by the defendant, and then she was killed. He did not return her. Once she left, I think the mother maybe had somewhat second thoughts. I'm not trying to defend her at all because she's still in prison as well for her role in this. But, law enforcement was eventually notified. He became aware they were notified, and we believe that that's why he ended her life. He was convicted of first degree. We sought the death penalty, and they took 39 minutes to recommend the death penalty for him in that case. So that's an unfortunate case of, we think of, the large trafficking organizations that are bringing these victims to hotels in big cities. That is a problem, but this right here happens as well. Another is Robin Applewhite. This is the one I'm going to talk about more specifically in the breakout session because we had a lot of collaboration with law enforcement and NGOs. But it is something like out of a Criminal Minds episode or something, what he did to these young ladies. He would attract them through his wife/girlfriend. And basically these were folks that were already drug addicted or place to place homeless, and he would bring them in. He would ensure that they were hooked on heroin once he had them. And then he would, of course, withhold or give the heroin based on their ability to traffic for him. He was tried and convicted, and you can see the sentence there, 230 years to almost 300 years, which was the second highest human trafficking sentence in the country at that time. So, that was back in 2019, and he literally held these ladies in his basement and would lock the doors, not provide food, not provide drugs until they, did what they were supposed to do for him. One young lady was making him about $40,000 a month. That's how much money he was making. You can see the restitution that the judge ordered. So, very successful prosecution, very sad case. This is a child labor case, and this is a fellow that ran sort of a cult-like ranch in our county. It was sort of a makeshift trailer park near I-95. There was never any evidence of sex trafficking, but he was doing two things. He owned fish markets across the county, 4 or 5 of them. And he would have kids as young as 9 years old working in these fish markets. And it was forced labor by violence or intimidation. And then also what he was doing is getting a lot of federal grants for education, as if he was homeschooling children or providing education services, and they were not getting educated at all. They were working in the fish markets. And he was convicted. He was an older gentleman. He actually died in prison not too long into his sentence, but that was a case of labor trafficking we had in our community. Finally, Kadeem Kirk. This talks about how young our victims can be. He kidnapped a 13-year-old girl, and he attracted a 14-year-old runaway. He trafficked them both. This was the first conviction under the new law, which I think came in 2017, which made the punishment where you could make it a Class C felony, which basically carries about 6, 7, 8, 10 years, versus a Class F felony, which is probably more like a year or 2. And as you can see, he got what will be a life sentence for him, about 75 to 120 years. So that was another successful prosecution in our office. So this is sort of our approach for human trafficking. You got law enforcement, usually has the first interaction. Then the DA's office is involved, and then we get our NGOs involved for treatment for our victims and for diversion programs for our victims that may also be involved in criminal activity. And then we've talked some about the incarceration and that sort of thing. And one of the things I'll talk about in the breakout is we have a Worth Court in Cumberland County. That's a court for victims that have been involved or could be involved in human trafficking. But again, it's where they have drug charges and other type charges that are a result of the lifestyle, where we try to get them, where our concern is more getting them out of the lifestyle than it is these minor things that they're charged with. This is just our task force. I was talking, and any of you guys in law enforcement down here, We still have this task force. I will be completely honest and say it's not as strong as it once was with the shortages in law enforcement that have occurred in the last 7-8 years. It's hard for them to have a unit devoted simply to human trafficking the way they once did, but we're still committed to doing that work. This is just a news photo from, on the left is one of our stings, our prostitution stings involving human trafficking. And to the right is one of the individuals that was charged in one of our massage parlors that was a front for human trafficking. So, and I agree, the felony was a very good thing. The Conference of District Attorneys supported that. And, when we do these type of busts, to have that felony as a possibility makes it much easier to prosecute, to sort of go up the chain to see who really the main players and traffickers are. You have to treat these cases a lot like drug organization cases once you get involved in them. I mentioned the commission. Just wanted to give them thanks for the work they do. They're a group of folks. I'm the representative for the Conference of DAs. We've got a couple of judges on it, some NGOs on it, and some other government organizations that are represented. And of course, they're supposed to train, educate, provide services, and we meet usually about every other month, and the public is invited to our meeting, both in person up in Raleigh or by Zoom. Many of you, I know, join that, and encourage you to keep doing that. So I look like I'm just a touch over my time, so I'm going to stop. But come, if you want to learn any more about those various topics, come to the breakout session. I look forward to talking with you more about it.